Mic check for those online. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Hey, perfect. Thank you.
Ken, are you wearing green today? Is that what I'm seeing behind that plexiglass?
I'm here, but I'm in the
Yeah.
Cardinal. Do you want me to pull the plexiglass down? There's nobody else here except for Ledge and Sean.
It's your call. It just has a glare off of it. So that's all. So I just can't see how pretty you are today. That's all. But you're doing a great job chairing so far. So you're inspiring me.
That's not the plexiglass. That's my forehead.
No. Your forehead doesn't reflect like that.
Yeah.
That looks a lot better. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I could put my mask back on.
Well, if it makes you feel better. I think we're okay through the internet, though. It's your call.
No, I think we're safe. I've got 9:30. The mayor's going to be delayed, so she's not joining us. For attendance, I see online we have Councillor Hughes, Councillor Bermansky. I am scanning I do not see any other members of council at this time. I see administration. Thank you guys for all attending. So I will call the December 13th Community Living Standing Committee meeting I'll call it, we're here. And I got a camera. This is so nice.
Yeah.
All me. I'm like, if I break into Christmas carols, please forgive me. I apologize right now. Anyways, I've called the meeting to order. So moving to adoption of the agenda. Did anybody have any changes, additions, deletions? If not, I don't see any hands being raised. I'm just going to declare them adopted. So the agenda is adopted. Any appointments? Do we have anybody else? I thought I was going to have Jody Swanson from the Arts Committee here, but I don't see her on the Zoom call. So, but I do see Andrea. Andrea, are you going to speak to 6.2, the Standing Committee motion from Arts Development Advisory?
Yeah. If Jody's not here, I absolutely can do that.
Okay, well, she might join us, but we're going to probably power through this fairly quickly. So just be ready to jump in if you don't mind.
No problem.
Okay, so I don't see anybody else. So that's appointments. Number 5 on our agenda is approval of minutes of our November 22nd, 2021 meeting. Any changes in that one, members of the committee? I didn't see anything. All right, I don't need a motion. I'll just adopt the minutes from our November 22nd, 2021. So there we go. We're flying. 6 is advisory committee businesses. We all received in our packages committee minutes from a number of our different advisory committees. We have the Arts Committee, CSAC, EAC, and our Seniors Advisory Committee. I didn't see anything in there. So unless there's any changes to that, I will just adopt them as information. No, any changes, anybody there? Because I see both of you guys you were at the seniors, Sheena, and you were at the Arts and CSAC, Shelley. No changes? Good, thank you. I will declare them adopted. So we're flying, Andrea. We're into 6.2, request for standing committee motion from Arts Development Advisory Committee. And I still don't see Jody, so go ahead, Andrea. The floor is yours.
Okay, so for the past several years, for the Children's Festival annually, there's been a withdrawal of $30K from the Public Art Reserve to support a temporary art installation. The last couple were the Unity Project, if you remember the one with the multicolored yarn that created that huge web, and then there was Like a Rolling Stone. Well, for 2022, we found a piece called Walk, Walk, Dance, which was developed during COVID. It's a long section of essentially painted lines on the pavement, but when people walk across them or roll their wheelchairs across them or skateboard across them or what have you, they make music, and there's different sections and you can jump and interact with them. And so this installation would be up actually, instead of just for the 4 days of the Children's Festival, would be up for a month, the whole month of June. So it would premiere at the Children's Festival and then would be up for the month of June. I think that's the basics of it. I have a photo of it and a bit of information. If you want, I can share my screen, but that's the gist of it. So the cost for this installation would be 38 as opposed to the 30 that we normally dedicate. But as I said, it's a month long instead of just the usual 6 days.
All right, and that's coming out of the Public Art Reserve, correct?
Yes.
All right. Do you know right off the top of your head, Andrea, what's in that reserve right now?
It's just over 170.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Go ahead, Sheena.
Hello, hi, Andrea.
Hi.
Can you share your screen and just show it? I think it sounds great. I just would love to just see what you have for.
Absolutely. It will let me. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Are you seeing this now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's only been done, it premiered in Quebec City. They did the prototype there, and then they've also done it in Toronto. So this would be the Western Canadian premiere of it. This is essentially what it looks like. And there's a very short video. This is of the prototype, the video. So it doesn't look as, fancy with the green boxes and everything, but it's a very, very short video. It'll just give you an idea here.
Sure.
I don't know if you can hear the sound on the video. Can you?
No.
No.
That's okay, but we can guess.
Well, it's not as exciting without the sound, but it makes lovely music.
That's so cool. That's bad.
So I almost envision it like a huge piano, like in the movie Big.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounds fun. Cool.
Yeah, it's quite cool. And it's, no matter what sort of state we're in, it's outdoors, it's physically distant, it's surprising. It's just, it can blend in. We have the ability to customize a little bit of how we want the lines to look and the plants and wherever we want to put it.
That's so cool.
Where are we envisioning putting this? And it's just in front of Art Place or where?
Yeah, well, I think we'll work with the artist to figure out exactly where it would fit. There's a lot of territory along the trails and the festival site that it could go. But as we found from just our brief recent experience with exposure, having it right in front of St. Albert Place and right downtown is really lovely just because of the traffic and the attention that it draws with people just coming to the downtown. So if it's up for the whole month, it would be nice to have it sort of in front around the plaza somewhere where there's a lot of traffic.
Just in 1 second here. So the other thing was, I don't know, this is sort of related, is for the Children's Festival, are we still planning to have a more complete festival, or are we planning to do it again more like we did last year?
No, it will be a more complete festival. It'll be condensed to 4 days instead of 6, just because of the ability of schools to come on site in full force as they have been prior to COVID. I just don't think they're there yet in terms of mass gatherings of children and stuff. But yeah, it will be 4 days. There will be more of a concentration of capitalizing on outdoor activity as much as possible. So we're anticipating putting up a giant tent for outdoor performances so that we're less reliant on indoor spaces. But yeah, it will look much, much more like it has in the past.
Kids are looking forward to it. I don't have any other questions. If you want to bring forward the motion, Mr. Chair, just let me know.
Yeah, anything, Councillor Bromanski, in relation to this? Nothing? Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead then, Councillor Hughes.
Sure. The Community Living Standing Committee recommend to council that $38,000 be withdrawn from the Public Art Reserve to support the month-long temporary art installation Walk Walk Dance for the 2022 Children's Festival in June.
Great. I accept that. Any comments or?
Sorry,
ahead.
yeah. I have people for some reason walking around. They normally don't walk around at this time around me. I think this sounds like a lovely piece of art. I'm glad that we're actually able to capitalize it for more than just the 4 days. So that people who are not always there during the Children's Festival also have an opportunity to enjoy it. I think it's nice. It's actually good for all ages. And it seems similar to like the piano in Big. And I think that anybody who ever saw the movie Big wanted to play on that piano, quite frankly. So this is an opportunity to do that. So thank you for what you brought forward on this. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I can only add that I'm excited for this too. And now that I've seen it, I agree with the comments made by Councillor Hughes. I'm looking forward to this. Plus also, it'd be nice if it was downtown, but I mean, I'm obviously going to let you guys determine the location. We do have farmers market, so that would probably bring a lot of people down there. Yeah, it's just going to be a nice addition to our community in the summer. So go ahead and close, Councillor Hughes, if you need to. You're on mute if you were talking, Sheena.
Sorry.
I know
For some
you got a
reason
bunch of people in your kitchen there.
I have people annoying me right now, so I have it. It's not you. Isn't that good news? Yes, no, nothing further. Just I'm looking forward to seeing this come.
We could put it in your kitchen if you'd like, you know.
No, I have enough people in my kitchen right now.
All
So
right, call the vote then. All in favor? You can just raise your hand, Shelley. I can see it. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. So thank you very much, Andrea. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this. So moving on to new business, 7.1, honorarium payments policy. And I did see Marta, so go ahead. Welcome, Marta. Thank you. I'm glad you joined us early because we're flying.
This is awesome. I think we're going to be a record today. Maybe I just jinxed it. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm here to present the Honorarium Payments Council policy to you. And my colleague, Cindy DeBruin, is also here. She's available to answer any questions you may have. Honoraria are voluntary payments made by the city to individuals as tokens of appreciation in recognition of special services rendered or for time spent, for which fees are not legally required to be paid. The draft council policy is a general umbrella document that establishes the basis upon which honorarium payments should be implemented and creates a maximum limit that may be paid per honorarium payment. If this council policy is approved, the next step will be for administration to create the associated administrative directive, which will provide further details about honorarium payment amounts for specific undertakings. There is currently no standard procedure for honorarium payments at the city, and honorarium payments are provided on an ad hoc basis, based generally on what similar organizations pay for similar services. With a standard in place, departments will be able to plan for honorarium payments more consistently. With that said, administration is recommending that the Community Living Standing Committee recommend to council that the honorarium payments council policy be approved as presented. And I'm available for questions as well as Cindy. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Marta. I appreciate the presentation. So just to be clear, we're not talking about some internal matter relating to council. This is in relation to the fact when perhaps we have elders speaking or we have elders attending community events, they would receive an honorarium as outlined in the new policy, proposed new policy. Sorry, I just got flybyed there.
Everyone has flybys today. Yes, Councillor Mackay, that is correct. And I'll let Cindy expound upon that if she wants to.
Good morning. Yes, Councillor Mackay, we tend to, we've learned a lot about honoraria these last couple of years. It's certainly not restricted to our work with the Indigenous community, but of course, other groups as well. But just having a standard policy that will be able to guide the overall direction, especially in us building an administrative directive that's going to help actually realize and provide those protocols in place for administration to implement this policy will be our all-important next step.
And so right now, there's nothing in here in relation to the financial impacts that we're looking at, like we're not identifying a number. So is the intent then to come back, or is the intent to identify a dollar figure or a range, or how does that work?
Go ahead, Marta.
Well, there is a maximum identified in the council policy.
yeah.
So and so the administrative directive will outline specific honorarium payments, and Cindy can speak to that if, more specifically if she likes, but we've just identified a maximum that we believe will encompass everything. And so the administrative directive itself would not be brought back for council approval.
There it is.
That would be approved by the CAO.
Sorry, I just saw it right here, number 5. I apologize. I missed that on yesterday. Sorry.
And if I can build off of it, Councillor Mackay, we're not necessarily anticipating a significant change in the honoraria that we give. We're just looking to enhance consistency across the organization and clarity for all members of administration as they're working with the community in areas that would qualify to receive an honoraria.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bermansky, go ahead with your question.
Hi, I just have a question. Say it's a specific event, and I mean, how many honorariums would you pay out at that event? Could it be 30 people or one person at the event, so to speak?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, I think it's really tough to specifically identify that because it depends on the magnitude or the event itself. So many times in our work, we may work with one elder or one fiddler or one somebody to come and do a prayer and a drum. And this is just, of course, through the Indigenous relations lens. But there are other times if we have a large scale event where we may have multiple representatives. In those situations, we would be required to provide multiple honoraria. So again, once we have this administrative directive, it'll be really clear. There's a couple of organizations like the University of Alberta, for example, that have a great sample for us that we can build off of that are very specifically detailed. And this way, everybody knows whether it's the recipient or the potential recipient of an honoraria, as well as administration who's providing it. It will be clear for everyone to know what can be expected. And that's sort of the gap, I guess, that we're trying to fill right now. But without knowing the types of events that we're being asked, for example, to provide, it's hard to specifically pinpoint how many would be, given out at any particular time.
And where would the funding come from?
So most of the funding is already built into existing programs. So again, we're working with administration through the sort of work we've done with Indigenous relations the last 6 months or so, that if there is an event to be held and, to work with and provide some guidance, this administrative directive will be able to outline what different departments should be building in order to provide this. So that wouldn't be a separate ask or a separate budget line. Most of the events would already have that built into their existing costs.
So you approved it prior to it being approved then, is what I'm hearing, or?
No, I think it's just something that's always been expected, or it's been recognized that it's something that's needed. So for example, when we did the flag raising ceremony and we put together, back in September, and we put together the event budget, we knew that some honoraria would be required. And so we ensured that that was incorporated in the budget. Where the gap is and where we hope this administrative directive under this policy will help is that when we do the flag raising ceremony and we provide a specific amount of honoraria, then if there's another event that, for example, community services is offering where it requires honoraria, they'll provide the same amount. Where right now it's not necessarily consistent because each department just does everything different based on the budgets they're building for their programming.
How much did you pay out for the flag raising event per person and how many?
That's something I'd have to take as an information request because there was quite a bit of detail and a lot of planning. So unfortunately, I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, and how many events have you paid out for? Like, has it got a long history already, or?
Honoraria is something that has, at least again, I can only speak to it doesn't only apply to, Indigenous relations. It's much broader than that. But speaking to the Indigenous relations, for many years, we've tried to recognize Métis Week, and National Indigenous Peoples Day, Treaty 6 Day. Those tend to be sort of the three big ones. Of course, since the Kamloops recovery earlier this year, we've had other additional things such as the walk that was held on July 11th. And then we had a special event this year with the flag raising, which was a one-time event. So again, we have anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 annual events where from the Indigenous relations portfolio, we've paid out honoraria. but there may be other events that other departments are doing that may require that, and it would be built into their own individual budgets.
Okay, I'll send in an information request for the information, and thank you.
I guess you can do it formally, Shelley, or Cindy, are you just going to do that, take that IR right now?
I can do that
What?
for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So just one, I only have one right now. Okay, you ready, Cindy? Or Marta, we'll see who wants to take it. So we have here that the maximum is 500, and I get that. Then it says unless the specified amount authorized by the CAO. So I'm just wondering why we're not having it authorized by council, and do we actually think that we're going to be using that frequently? Like I'm thinking that, or do we actually think this is going to encompass 99% of any type of honoraria, or do we think that it's going to be frequently used as an exception? Because I'm just a little concerned about like just the transparency of allowing it to exceed it and having no one else know really but the CAO about that. So can you just speak to why we're doing the CAO and not council? Because otherwise I'm going to do a motion to change it to council.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Hughes, through the chair. And maybe I'll take the first part and hand over the why the CAO versus council to Marta from that sort of legal or governance perspective. But in terms of the frequency, that would be quite a significant exception and most certainly not the rule. I think the $500 maximum is quite generous and probably higher than what we would be looking for on an ongoing basis. So it's probably not something we can expect to see regularly. But with that, I'll pass it over to Marta to answer the rest of that question.
Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, Councillor Hughes. So I guess broadly to start out the question, the council policy can say whatever council would desire. However, the reason it's drafted the way it is currently is because it would be a very rare exception that it would exceed that amount. But in addition, to bring forward a request to council to pay out a $600 honorarium payment, it's really quite an operational matter. So it makes more sense to delegate that authority to the CAO. Otherwise, those are the kinds of details that really should be left to the CAO. However, that said, if you desire the change in the policy, then we can draft it that way. We can just say that the maximum is $500, and that would mean that if there can be nothing exceeding 500. And if we needed to pay something more than 500, we would have to bring it to council for approval.
David, you showed up, so I feel like you want to say something. Is there anything you want to add?
I've always been here, Councillor. So
yeah, but I can see you.
I just wanted to point out that as Marta said, it certainly is something. If council feels this is important enough, to deal with, they could, make it, if it's over $500 per payment, it would have to go to council. There is another way, though. If you're worried about the transparency, you could say in the policy that, okay, the CAO alone can authorize more, but then the CAO has to report it to council in a public venue, so that any honorarium payment over 500 has to be specifically reported by the CAO to council. That way it is open and transparent if it's done. So that's another way to deal with it. I understand your concern, but if you want to deal with the concern, but not, not have council dealing with kind of small amounts like this, then that's another way to do it.
I haven't got the thing typed up, but what I was thinking is at least to say authorized by CAO and reported to council, whether it's somewhere council knows, like whether it's a slot memo or something, so that we are just simply aware of a different transaction happening, so we could actually, you could have that discussion, I guess, if there was a concern about it frequently occurring. So
I don't know if we need sorry, Councillor Hughes. I don't know. I mean, right now, this is just being presented to us with recommendations. I mean, administration could certainly take it away based on some feedback as outlined by Mr. Lafleur and just add an additional sentence or words in relation to having it brought back to council if we're over. I get my concern my only comment would be around the $500. That's I mean, and picking up on Council Bermansky's comment, I mean, let's say we have a big event that we paid out multiple 500s, and let's say there was 10, so that's all of a sudden $5,000. Would there be a total amount, or would that be, that's where I don't understand the finances, or would that be built into a budget for the actual event? And would be separate from the actual policy we're looking for? So we would have a maximum of 500, but maybe the event would have multiple honoraria paid out. So that's kind of where I'm stuck on the finances. So that's where I don't know, Marta or Cindy, where it's coming from. If it's coming from an identified event, then how do we report that?
Thank you for the question. I think the $500 would be per individual. So for example, if you had, again, I'm going to take that as an information request on the flag raising, but we know we had somebody drum, we know we had somebody fiddle. They would have each received an individual honoraria. Then, of course, we had a number of elders and dignitaries there from, for example, the Treaty 6 Confederacy. So they received a separate honoraria. So the $500 is meant to be the individual maximum. And again, built into the individual budget of all of those events. So, really the city has been paying out honoraria to elders who have supported different initiatives for a number of years. So this practice isn't necessarily new. The goal of this policy is just to enhance consistency.
No, I appreciate that 100%. And I appreciate the thought, and I realize the challenge this has been, and it does fill the gap. But I'm just picking up on like how the total cost, because I mean, just that example alone, I mean, we could have a significant payment that we would have, and would that be coming back to council in some sort of a quarterly or yearly or something? I think that's the piece that we need clarity on. So
maybe I can answer this. I think I hear the question whether there's a reporting mechanism in here in the council policy. And so currently there isn't. And I think we are discussing it because Councillor Hughes raised the issue about, if there's anything in excess of $500. So if there's a over $500 payment to an individual, what Councillor Hughes was talking about was having some sort of reporting mechanism so the CAO would report to council about that. There is also nothing in here about reporting generally about honorarium payments. So if you have nothing exceeding $500 individual honorarium payments all year long, you wouldn't be getting any reports about anything. And so certainly if council wanted administration to provide a report, whether it's quarterly or annually or whatever, about just the total amount of honorarium payments paid out over the course of the year, we could add that to the policy, but it's not in there currently.
I have another question. If it's sorry to interrupt, I had my hand up. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I see. I just didn't know.
Conversation going on here. So apologize if I was out of order. But for the reporting back, it's sort of like after the fact at that point. So if the CAO approves something, then just reports it back to council. I don't see any point in that, being that it's already done. And then the other question I had is, how does it decided? Is there a certain person that's of greater importance that they qualify for a higher amount, or how is that actually calculated?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, that's exactly what we want to build in this administrative directive so that it is consistent. So we know that, elders in the Indigenous relations work that we do, elders are provided with an honoraria, as well as those that are perhaps providing a drum and a prayer as an opening, or the fiddle. So similar to what we saw at council inauguration. So those are the very standard typical ones we see. So the administrative directive would look to itemize those, as well as assign the appropriate consistent cost to all of those. Anything else over and above that doesn't tend to require honoraria, at least on the Indigenous side, but that's where that flexibility, I believe, that Marta was speaking about in terms of that CAO approval. If it ever did warrant over 500, it would be unique circumstances. So we would need to ensure the CAO was aware and supported that sort of as part of whatever event was being planned.
Could I have some examples of other than the Indigenous that you've paid out?
I'm not aware of any specifically. However, it could be things such as, for example, guest speaking at events. That's an example that comes up quite often, but I'm not aware if we actually have issued any honoraria for that, but that would be built into the administrative directive as a non-Indigenous example of an honorarium payment that could be issued.
So is it built into the Indigenous program already and has been for some time?
No, so it was which built in? I just want to make sure I
Well,
understand.
you
the
said that
question.
you had it built into the budget, you know, ahead of time is kind of
So-
how you worded it.
Yeah, so I think for events, and again, I'm not sure if this is an actual event, so this is just purely an example, but for example, if for Children's Festival in the past, if the culture department had decided to have an elder come and do a blessing to launch or a smudge or something like that, they would have ensured that they had, you know, the appropriate amount of money built in to provide that elder an honoraria. So it's not something that Indigenous Relations would have even necessarily been, you know, aware of, because the department would have handled that. Why we're looking at this policy is we want to make sure if culture is doing that, that they're paying that honoraria in alignment with sort of the corporate standard, in alignment to what other departments are doing, and in alignment with what we're doing with Indigenous Relations with some of the standard ceremonies. So again, it's something that I think we've always done. We've just kind of not had a consistent approach. And so by doing, and everybody's built it into their own budget. So there shouldn't be a whole lot of additional asks other than what's already built into the existing operational budgets of each department. I imagine it would be quite an extreme to require more money.
Would it be in the programs part of the budget, or where would it be?
I can only speak to what I've done, where in the areas where I've been responsible, and then I've built it in. I've built that in, and we always, I think most departments tend to build in some miscellaneous costs for unanticipated things. But again, in the scope of, say, for example, a significant event that costs, a few tens of thousands of dollars, if the honoraria, is maybe a few $100s, it's something that's just been built in there, and it's probably not something that's been specifically pulled as a line item, which is why, council hasn't historically received the information, because it's just built in as sort of that cost of doing business.
Right. I think a line item would be important for sure.
All right. Any more questions, Councilor Bermansky?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, your hands was still up, so it just, that's where I was confused before. Councilor Hughes, any more questions arising?
So I know it says on the motion that it's for approval. So if we're giving this feedback right now, is the intention, I know we said we don't need motions, but we're also saying go for approval. So do we want to say go for approval based on the feedback perhaps that's being brought forward, and then
Marta's just put something in the chat.
is amended? Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that would work for me. I think that just as just general feedback, I think that having like some kind of an annual statement, just that we have an idea of what's been going on, would be useful. Whether it's just through a slot memo or something that would just to let us know where we're at on the general expenditures would be useful. And then again, if it gets exceeded, to at least let council know. And I think that at least then, if requests come in that exceed that, the city manager then can at least say, if I do exceed this, I'm going to have to, make it gives a bit more, I guess, bargaining is what I'm thinking, or just leverage. It is if it has to be brought forward or at least stated to council, then it's a different situation than just simply allowing it. So those are the two areas I think that would just be helpful, is just that if it does exceed, the council's aware, and the council is just as aware of just the general amount of expenditures per year would be useful. But I think that having this general standard is useful, what you've put forward so far. So.
All right. I just see Ledge working on it. Are you ready? Any more discussion? Mayor, do you have any comments? None? Okay. So can you?
I have another comment, actually. I think that
comment or question.
Okay. Would it be reported prior to or after the fact? Like, I don't see any, I just don't want to be advised after it's too late to do anything about it, is what I'm seeing in the wording here.
So if I can answer that question, if the council policy is established as is, it will give administration the authority to work within it. So anything that is allowed within the policy will not be reported beforehand. This would be the approval for administration to act in accordance with the policy. And the reports that would be presented annually or regularly, semi-regularly, would give council the information it would require if it wanted to then amend this policy in the future to put a different limit or to change how budgets are approved for honoraria in advance of. But for now, this would just give administration the kind of the toolbox to act within and to take the honorarium payments away and apply them consistently all throughout the whole organization.
Okay. Can it not be changed at this point in time?
You can make the amendment to, I mean, again, like, the challenge we have, Councilor Bermansky, is that we're not talking on a large number of events, and we're getting into operations somewhat, and we're going to actually have lots of times I can just see just the logistics of trying to deal with an event, trying to organize an elder, or trying to get some other presenters who may fit within the policy. I mean, we're not talking a lot of times that we would potentially be into this situation. And I just think operationally, every time administration would have to run to council to get approval or possible approval, it would just move out of governance and into operations. So I mean, I'm just concerned that I understand what you're trying to do, but I mean, it would be like, let's say the snow plowing budget. We set a budget, and anytime that we want to clear the sidewalks, we don't expect administration to come back and clear the sidewalks, knowing that they might go into some contingency. So,
except we haven't seen any data on this, like on all the other departments. I mean, data has history. This doesn't really seem to have any history. We're kind of approving something that we've never even seen.
We're not approving. What we're doing is we're recommending to council, which is what a committee does. And then I mean, this will come back. We can actually ask for it to come back to committee because we don't have this now. We can actually ask that it's take into effect some of the comments that we've given administration. We can then bring it back to committee and then move it on to council, or we can just ask that these changes be made and then taken to council. So I mean, we can either do it either way, whatever the committee likes.
I would just like to see more information, by whatever means is most effective.
Okay. Marta or Cindy, what do you, can you get the data that do we actually have access to some of that data over time? I mean, like we've identified, we've been kind of flying by the seat of our pants policy wise around this. And I take the point that's been raised by administration that, I mean, you want consistency across the organization. You don't want to have something in recreation, do it one way, and somebody in another part of the administration do it a different way. So, but do we actually have a method of getting the data that Councillor Bermansky is seeking?
Through the Indigenous relations piece, I can certainly provide some historical data on the things that we, for example, have done this year. Again, recognizing this was a unique year in that we did a couple of other big events that we don't typically do. In terms of what various departments have done, if they've invited an elder, for example, I think the business breakfast is one that we did for years, and we would have the elder come and open with a prayer. So, what's been paid out by individual departments is probably fairly minimal. We can put an ask out and try and gather that information if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is like, we're not talking thousands of dollars here. We're probably talking within $5,000 in a year, and that would be extreme. I would even say $2,500 to $5,000. I'm just guessing on my involvement past historically. So I mean, we're not talking big dollars here.
How do we know that though, unless we've seen something?
Well, you're correct. I'm just saying, I'm making an observation as part of the discussion. So I don't know, Councillor Hughes, any thoughts?
Yeah, you know,
Hang
out
on,
of the
Carrie.
gate.
Hang on, Carrie. Go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry,
Councillor Hughes.
Carrie wants to
No,
say something, go right ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Hiltz.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair. We wouldn't probably have, like, with the exception of an Indigenous relations, we probably would not have great data to go back on over the past few years. You know, there may be a couple $100 paid out for the Children's Festival. There might be a couple $100 paid out for another event. The bulk of our payouts would be Indigenous relations. And that could be ranging anything from $500 for one event up to a few $1,000s for an event, depending on the magnitude and who's attending. But what we can do is, if this is something that is very, very important to the committee and council, is we can bring back for 2023 a review of 2022 spending. And that will probably provide something that has been consistently over the past few years. It would be very similar for what we've done in Indigenous relations, would be very similar to what we've done in the past few years, similar to what we've done in other departments as well. We can provide that background in a report for 2023 if this is important.
I mean, that just takes it out another whole year without actual guidance. But anyways, go ahead, Councillor Hughes, you can finish your thought. If you're there still.
Yeah, I'm still here. Don't you worry, I'm listening to you all. So I think that I don't want to be sitting here and just getting too far into the weeds is my first thought.
Yeah.
Like, this is not an enormous budget like you said. I realize that we don't have the exact numbers right now, but we do have the number of general events it's been applied to and how many we would expect it to have happen. So right now, what I would just suggest is that we just move forward with getting a report like annually, and if it exceeds it, to let us know. And then if the budget seems to be extraordinary after the annual report, then we could change it to say we want to have a bit more say or something of that nature. Because I don't want to be interfering with the ability to get these events done. Sometimes they have to be done very quickly, depending on what comes of it. And I don't want to have delays because of either council breaks or just the number of times that we're meeting to have come into it. So, I mean, personally, that's where I feel is just let us know. And if we see that there's a problem or we see that there's a concern, we want to have more of a discussion before things happen, then because we get annual reports, then we get to see if there's ever a time that we wanted to change that. And I think that just by doing that alone will also keep the budget in check.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baransky, you have your hand up again.
I do, yes. Could we get a 2021 report? Like, I want a previous report, not a future report, if that could be.
So that would be another information request, Councillor
Yes.
Baransky. Can you, Mr. Hiltz, do you want that formally tied into everything, or are you satisfied that everything can be kind of captured with the other information requests that the Councillor Baransky put forward?
Yeah, we can do it as one information request and we can move forward
Okay.
with it at this point.
All right. Can I then,
Thank you.
anything else, Councillor Baransky?
Thank you.
So let's just take a motion here as amended. Go ahead, Councillor Hughes, if you want to move that one. It's on the screen there.
I was on mute. I was talking to myself. Is it the top one or the bottom one or both? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's both. Yeah,
Okay,
they're both.
okay, I'm back in the game here. The council policy C-CAO-25 honorarium payments include that the honorarium payments council policy be amended to require that the CAO to report to any individual honorarium payments over 500 to council and report the financial details of any event involving multiple honoraria where the total amount exceeds 500 to council. Do you want me to read both at the top?
Yes, please.
Or
Yeah, no,
Okay.
go ahead.
that the Community Levy Setting Committee recommend to council the council policy C-CAO-25 honorarium payments attached December 13th, 2021 agenda report entitled honorarium payments policy be approved as amended.
Great.
The only thing I had actually before I take it,
Yeah,
I was reading it, is I feel like 500, I feel like it should be like, it says report to council, I think over 500. I feel like it should be over 1,000 because sometimes you might have multiples where you're paying 3 people $200 and then we're hitting 600 and then we're doing a report to council on everything. Again, I don't want to be bogging down administration with reports that are unnecessary. So I would rather have it say, can you put that back on the screen there?
Yeah,
Or am I missing-
that was kind of going to where my point was, because we're actually the information we have in front of us around the proposed policy speaks to individual payments. We don't have anything in relation to events. And that's kind of where I was going with some of my inquiries around that. So Diane, go ahead.
I've just been listening to the conversation and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you wanted was an annual report that talked about all the honoraria, not necessarily just for the events that exceeded 500. I think that's what you were getting at. Is that?
Yeah.
Correct?
So it's
So I think it should just say the financial details of events involving honoraria, period. So we would give an annual report that tells you all the honoraria that were spent in a year.
That's what I would prefer as well.
So yes, get rid of that whole bottom honorary. You don't need the exceeds 500 on that, Cheryl and Brittany. You just get rid of that, and then just said there and report the financial details of all honoraria
In an annual report. Okay, good. I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole that we didn't want to go down.
No, and plus also it would just individuals, we would end up having these massive reports. So I would rather see totals.
Yep.
But I think we need just some clarity we don't need payments over 500, do we? No,
if it's over 500, just to let us know.
Yeah, we do. I apologize. Sorry. Thanks.
No, it's so good. We're working together here.
There was 2 500s in there at one time and I was confused.
Yeah. Okay.
So is that okay? Then I haven't accepted it yet. So you can just read the top one in then.
So the council policy CACAO 25 honorarium payments include that honorarium payments council policy be amended to require the CAO to report to any individual honorarium payments amounts over 500 to council and to report the financials of all honorariums in an annual report.
Back to council?
Well, I would assume it's to council.
Let's not wordsmith that. I agree. I agree.
Okay. I think that I'm just looking, can I just, before you accept it, can I ask one question based on the motion? Mr. or just Diane or Mr. for anybody, with this, this would be manageable. I'm guessing from an administrative point of view that we're not bogging, or maybe to Mr. Hiltz, that this is a manageable addition, right? So what I don't want to do is bog people down. So I think that this is a manageable addition, right?
No, I think that this is a manageable request.
Okay.
I think for the amount of, we might have one every couple of years that we'd exceed $500. So you might get one slot memo on that. And then the individual report coming each year, that should be able to do through slaughter to committee as information.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else then? I'll accept that. Any opening comments then, Councillor Hughes? We've kind of talked around.
Yeah, I'm glad that this is being brought forward. Actually, there had to be some level of if we're going to be doing this more regularly, just to have some kind of constraints and some kind of parameters for everybody, so that we're doing everything fairly. I think that just having that report will allow council just to monitor how things are going, and just allow that level of transparency so that we understand what's happening. So I think it's been a good discussion. I think that the policy as it started is also just useful to have in our repertoire of being able to figure out how we're doing things and how and when, without actually trying to bog administration down with details before they try to get events out. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Anything, Councillor Bermansky? No, she's fine, Mayor. No, excellent comments, Councillor Hughes. I agree with them, and I appreciate administration bringing this forward. I mean, it was obviously something that we identified as a gap, and it just improves consistency across the organization. So thank you for bringing this forward, and I hope the little tweak doesn't really cause hardships as identified, but I doubt that it will. Anything to close? And I'm good with that. Call the question. All in favor, just raise your hands online there. Councilor Bermansky, I can't see you actually as I said that. Is that favor? All in favor?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's carried unanimously. So thank you very much. Thank you again, Marta. Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. LaFleur. And I don't have anything else. I've got number 8, which means adjournment. So thank you, everyone. We have a good week. I'll see you guys, some of you guys on Wednesday, I guess. All the best.